Good deal. All right, let's get started.
Let me know when everyone's good for the email chain, and then I'll send that.
Okay.
I'm ready for it.
I sent it. Heck, Chris, are y'all good?
Yeah, I'll be okay.
Hold on, I'm downloading. I'm good.
Okay. Advantage 1 is Russia, U.S. Army of NATO counter-terror operations is key to preserving bandwidth for collective defense, smaller 20 leaders and data leaders, taking on tasks such as terrorism leaders and nuclear impossible undertaking, stability, cooperative security, horrible, the perception conduct, focus collective defense and downgrading will take American leadership time for get back to the basics, thought leaders streamline missions to offer up all existential challenges unloaded, institutions leaders getting out of NATO and organizing cannot take on national talent to add more responsibilities, risk defense, real strength lies in bandwidth, unloading responsibilities, actors allow officials to focus on Russia hosts and lower concerns, expanding the role of NATO weakens Article 5 commitment drawdown allows EU to subsume the role of Baranowski and terrorism engagement require years to use the causes cannot use the role for NATO to place on power with the mission to deter Russia and place their hands on that way looking to fight war. NATO is defending under Article 5 which does not consider Russian methods candidacy requires rapid partnerships activities NATO's ill place a much more neutral natural fit for the EU and restricting NATO's role to deter Russian probing copy training Russian demonstrated ability willingness to change borders towards Ukraine Crimea defense spending remains high negative seen across the Syria and Ukraine Russia and the allies of preemptive strikes the use of nukes is de-escalatory NATO's capabilities and deployments and NATO's responsibilities large enough to require capability Russia to use a host of tools structure exposed to undermine deterrence Russia must enter Russian aggressions and help focus number one priority NATO to be in the North Atlantic, everything else is secondary, and probing gets model globally extinction gear goal, 60 powers on the move, Ukraine, Russia, Argos, SCS, and probing China, Russia, accelerating for the other, and allies drawing conclusions about the neighborhood and allies elsewhere, probing the model, for trying to accelerate the claims to emerge multiple large predators, and serious could be conflict or nuclear competitive Russia, China, political crisis, to test focus on probes, allies, rating on the tactics, and increasing the potential for accidental platforms, probing Europe, Asia, Estonia, Taiwan, deterrence, the assumption the US is able to fulfill the obligations, arms versus cyber hybrid of probes are culminated in sharp nuclear attack, allowing the EU to fill in, allows effective crisis management that caps terrorism and instability. Gallon 17 troubles bringing Boko Haram, Al Qaeda, instability in Africa, violence persists, fueling the crisis, instability on Europe's war, instability, conflict, arising to remain the management of disorder, during the European civilian crisis management, mediating conflicts, European support will be important crisis important to the EU, challenges were inter policy tools, all existing conflicts, right out of control, crisis management crucial without a system will be vain, instability in Africa cascades, great power war, man. 13, there's a potential for conflict, Sudan, Eritrea, attention to destructive, very real wars, greater business, major overturn, balance, achieve, assault, instability, triggers, problems, race, friends in Pakistan, to trigger the conflict in the conflict security in Europe and Middle East states are ideal if it works with groups of 5 funds, fighters, training weapons, thrilling underworld to destabilize the states that play direct role in crises. African terrorism is existential. The Fayanka, 19 Boko Haram players in the nuclear conflict, terrorist attacks enhances the likelihood of CBR on terrorism's largest human casualties possible, but current strong motivation of use Nigeria embrace. WMD's recent use in Iraq, Syria extended the African Syrian conflict with to represent ability to obtain capability of proliferation materials and it is possible. Advantage 2 is terror, nuclear involvement in Middle East and Africa's ineffective historical record, non-military problems and political divergences. Hardy, 20 news involved in media questions that make a record of the record difficult to see impact records diminished by Libya, problems around military limits, access to peripheral monopolies, anything is unsustainable. The demanded advantage to put the letters to EU and UN will be accepted. Divergences and present a front opposing side Syria incident in the Mediterranean related to the attack. Ability to come up with a policy, lack of definition concerns prevents an effective role, but the flag of NATO ensures conflict major 20 and commitment to make capabilities and care agreement. The latter shortly supply definition of the South terrorism. The result includes the NATO value of address dimensions of terrorism. NATO's controversial will the fuel conflict. It opens the Pandora's box of conflicts in the region. June 20, intervention stabilization failure opens the Pandora box for since Iran into the Russian extremist group China with foreign hostilities. Let's say effort to pacify the pie in the sky, Middle East, and turn the 30th war, and specifically North Kurdistan draws in Russia. Gravely 19 trade Syria, US, Russia, Turkey, Taiwan, Taiwan, and other freedom power, US, and Kurdish crimes. IS, Turkish Kurds, terrorists, US, has balls of terrorists, multiple incidents, tried to bomb the Turkish, resulted in the Turkish shooting down the plane, countries excused another invade the country, non-state actors created for global instability, interpretation, self-defense, and that is in nuclear shooting wars. Wilson, 70 Turkish shot down a warplane, Al-Assad operating within the norms of retaliating, how to shooting war with stockpile, 8300 nukes. Official documents also the TNWs control the conflict, US and mirrored the strategy, and the plan solves the US relies on NATO. Intervention going out alone, both domestic and international support, Gary 20, indicating the preference for conflict include NATO confirmed US partnership with legitimacy, lack of support, imaging, clear intervention, Congress, public, community perceived as acting in legitimate their participation, the US organized NATO, have proceeded in unilaterally, not seek other alliances, rebuild part of the value, the alliance consolidation of NATO's role to effectiveness and alliance credibility, UCO, can alliance needs clarification, security mechanism to relate the threats capable of countering non-traditional attacks, not allowed NATO prepared. This is not prepared to the amount response that January 11 that were extended external providers, operating president, kind of threats. NATO allies expertise to defense against non-traditional attacks likely to provoke a crisis of credibility, and the United States also substantially reduces its conventional military presence related to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the West Asian North Africa region. NATO falls in line, spurling 19 matters into American preferences not made in aligning with allied preferences of those of the allies, Islamists, and embedded attacks on staff in favor to offer reliable means exercising leadership to guide support the line of medical demands are articulated America's engagement with NATO's proven effective and addressing changes to allied business conditionalities, voting issue, time crunch, where carries the best off against multiple unique conditions of assaulting because if we prefer only constraints are from human nature, avoid skepticism, relative to natural constraints are motivating by definition. Flanagan, 16 prior to the effects of culture, we prefer different things, shelter, play, communication than others, morality cannot sentient behavior, though human beings constrained relative to natural, secular, external, and individual reasons, tumbling from human nature, shaped from propensities of elder aspire to things that matter and interest us, nothing matter to things do matter because of our membership and virtue, how we evolved, and only naturalism avoids evolution, debunking alternative framework, can't grant moral knowledge and say, can't justify why human moral beliefs reflect truth instead of by accident. Fitzpatrick 16 recognized truths and good reasons as mathematical would take the beliefs stated by moral facts, which are explanatory terms our beliefs are accident, explanation, citing intellectual factors, issuing engagement and justification, the missing crucial explanation of your belief. No one starts off being retracting your wrong can be moved to accepting your evolution, explanation of moral experience and grasping truths to preclude debunking explanations of belief. Thus, of ethics and naturalism, morality can only be based on empirical knowledge derived from the natural world. First, we can't obtain knowledge of non-natural facts. We cannot 16 normative properties, actions of property, natural properties, impacts, rectangular photons in my retina, normative cause all observe normal facts as we do all other normative or non-natural. Explain how we know non-natural can be observed as not part of causal nexus features ruled out in the science and knowing what's the act good, a priori is unclear. The reasoning is sensitive, non-natural. The only natural evidence of goodness implies that it is good. Midcourt one natural knowledge by the senses looking to appear. We have evidence things are red. We have evidence of the things good or desired. The things evidence that they were good. Lack of experience. We lack the capacity to make those judgments, and thus the standards maximize the when we prefer extinction precludes inevitable progress means it's better to keep our options with my council 14 years reasons for many to extinction like 140 18 year reverse with time no better evidence how if we do we should be understand whether people are positive options are possible even if morality isn't justified. Choice 16 is morality what's our forward practical outcome morality is practically cost benefit analysis understood as preference satisfactions. Put the card at satisfactions.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you not read?
The last card.
Okay, cool. You read everything else?
And like also the analytic reject auto vote neg arguments.
That'll be useful. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the plan, or I guess the advantage. Can you read me a piece of evidence that says the word military presence?
Our evidence is all in the context of, our plan text is all about U.S. military presence, and all of our evidence is in the context
Okay, then can you read me
NATO
a line that says the word military presence? I control F in the doc.
Okay, why is that the bar? The argument is that it's about the military forces in the region.
Okay.
Our AF is about military presence.
The AF, conventional military presence, relating to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, what does that mean?
Forces that are involved in NATO operations in the region.
Okay, what NATO operations are ongoing?
Counter-terror operations.
Okay.
Iraq and Syria that are like specifically the NATO.
Okay, can you explain the North Kurdistan scenario?
Yeah, the argument is that because there is the argument is that NATO involvement in the Middle East is structurally unsustainable, which means that by showing that up, by removing that, it solves the perception of the flag of NATO in the region.
That makes sense. What are the reasons NATO involvement is unsustainable in the status quo?
Yeah, so this is the tardy evidence. It says that it has just had structural constraints in like the ability to impact the region because it sees no future for a partner to ever become like a part of the NATO organization. It also says that it's just a limit in terms of the military capacity of organization. It actually requires what is required for peace in the region is economic and diplomatic, which is something only the EU holds. The NATO only has military record.
Why does reducing U.S. military presence related to NATO solve the scenario?
Because it stops NATO. It solves NATO because we say that this is just like a fact. NATO is consensus based, which means that the United States, we durably feel that the United States will never be able to say yes to increasing presence in the region.
Yeah, but my question is like, are the only NATO operative missions involving U.S. troops, and if so, what piece of 180 evidence says that?
Again, if we say no to NATO if we fiat that the United States reduces presence, that means that durably the United States cannot increase presence. That means that since NATO is consensus-based and NATO would say, and the U.S. would say no, we can't have those operations.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool. That makes sense. I'll start from. Did you extend anything?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What did you extend?
Conditionality is a voting issue.
Got it. I think I got that. Anything else?
No.
Sending the dock. The order is 1, 2, 6 in that case. Cool. It has. It's not been sent. Let me know. I've already sent.
Yeah. How much do you use, by the way?
33.
Okay.
Let me know everyone's good.
I'm opening it.
Mhm. Interpretation, the one must explicitly specify what substantial tells in building evidence is not technical nor precise term. Some say technical non-technical term nor precise measure. Substantial does not allow for calculation more than the less great, and it's extremely vague clause. For legal reviews qualifies such situation between 40% or 50% of the clear 50% arbitrary. Case by case sounds probable. Violation they don't negate on class specification. Keep robust based over the details. Motion ambiguity allows one to recharge that dealing. Choreograph commits the one that way since it's only quantifiable abuse and desktop generics that way since limitation one lack. Specification means you vote on presumptions. Details will work out post when fail drop. The debater one is a term preventing abuse of practice in the future. Since all the rest of the executing or saying indefensible practice diet 2 types of observed bunch of abuse practice for the time draft to me. One reason occurs a race and marginal counts as fair for the devices as much as possible. 2 norms and occurs most favorable to being comparing models. 3 structure and vector visibility by execution with the judge. The extensification which takes the round of the various hands to RBIs it turns legitimate theory theory basically use it on until you can get on choose being set of people to be based on counterparts when they're very six and backgrounds and of course argue debates strike very bad practice there was an interest wrong skills substitute in order to that theory basically agree on one if they always one like how the negative beast was reaction after beast between those 2 is noticing one theory can represent norms that only able to be careful to debate develop the debate which also means you should reject one of theory because they can deal with the 2 and 2 noise we had because of persuasion and the 3 is otherwise just like the infinite theory of allows them to get away with infinite abuse. Skip the second one for now. Next off. Countercontext, the United States federal government ought to submit reducing military presence in the context of the plan to contract into a super forecasters. The United States federal government should commission its heavy structural analogy over conventional military to determine the best policy implementation strategy. The United States federal judiciary should establish that the above semi-structural analogy should be the standard for governmental decision making. The Council implements strategic forecast through structural analogies that are quick and inexpensive and ensure broader forecasting on future policies. Sabia in Proposal 13. Better strategic decision are made when given support functions play an important role to keep the informed decisions or discuss forecasters to try to work together more closely in government decision making for policy implementation to be used for due to control the speculations for investment analysis. There are quick and intersection implemented success and also making and saving about time planning. Poor predictions outweigh turn every impact for technological key action on all except for streaming. Ability and uncertainty every major focus debate turn doesn't know the most creative or policy constraints possible for high 6 or leading probabilities of taking for that way the person how they can assess probability and it's good to consistently use probability analysis and kids possible to improve policy by raising chances for assessing uncertainty. It competes your forecaster stock also means about negative presumptions such as an equal risk gap causes synchronizes that they stop it manner of 5 people who is actually 5 for some who are better than if they better knowledge of all the events like happening in the actual especially 284 people offering advice on political trust 80,000 years ago forecast was forecast that they have the equal probability of forecast that dark among social not more often supporting figures to journalists political studies specialists no better project intrinsic this complex can only be functionally competitive can never be at the plan run regress size scale work and cost numbers come solve days with costs remain benefits choose largely can make PF not competitive zero ability to generate a unique series of curves of vague plan running which goes fashion versus curves saving rex one strategies and so internet with locations like involving offense if they get intrinsic can be topical A's intrinsic for force primarily topics that solves intrinsic governance B's is fully blocking its new absolutely can be if that provides basic answer for survival other than intrinsic points outside top solve ground topic save reasons one is the next top level framing ethics must be certain and non-arbitrary one is logic arbitrary just as contradictions if we can justify arguments without reason for instance negate the size loose now is logical limits of arguments 2 is predictability finding there's logical assumptions thus predictability since any possible wrong taking bars over for contest 3 is binding this blurry downless for ethics law which is arbitrary opt out of ethics return with any action permissible presumption and permissibility negate A is more often false and design something false in different ways B is real what positive for positive justification for being adopted always instituted to go to Congress C is obvious moral obligation the lack of that obligation means the act has fulfilled a burden first hedonism collapses to moral egoism even pleasure is intrinsically good motivating it doesn't follow that other social pleasure is also intrinsically good one is a policy individual can access another perspective we can never fully understand why someone else thinks with the way they do so there are convictions of individuals on self-interest 2 is disagreement 2 is disagreement with what is partial fixation of different interpretation history contrasting with information assessment 3 is agency even if we know what's ethical there's nothing that binds us to ethical behavior the best metric for maximizing those outcomes motivation out with otherwise there is involved in take that action that is an application even if we agree on what is ethical we'll still be with the best way out how to maximize ethical outcomes and disagreements over calculus are inevitable the multiple words interpretation group 20 cosmological concept data is best in the universe single and complex functional with the entire universe to drive goal of each particle instant and any other time to occur at instant skip that for now. Absent unification, keeping place collapsing to the state of nature once ambiguity, individuals assert different perspectives and culminates in an unresolvable conflict. Absent a meeting force render truth and ethics indeterminate. 2 balanced individuals must act in self-preservation without a force. Prior to production, each person acts violently defend themselves, resulting in infinite balance. Thus, due to collapsing to the counter standard of consistency with absolute sovereignty, one must surrender moral judgment. Williams, next of unity self-preservation, not agree on tests have a reaction, not resolved directly due to the case within the same nature, and will guarantee the result of contestations with the authority criteria remove the state of nature's sovereign must control what is language. That negates the one assumes as higher presence sovereignty motivated, but this terminates the contradiction since the sovereign is all powerful and dealing the obligation sovereign would have to be protected and continue the authority of the sovereign. That negates the sovereign be able to limit their power and impose restriction on itself, down its own power push it towards the state of nature. There. Next up. Debate is a communicative activity, creates circulations of war that normalize it, for disrupting the communicative dissuasion of the one you see, or and to brief 14, to communicate about war and justify one's opposition to give meaning is still taking its backgrounds. Information is one of circles already taking place, pathology without a Z diagram, and consequential consequences of things benign representation, more planning, war to return fighting the bonds of the representation, no longer take place, more knowledge, who may take place, more rally, no longer substantial, more time to preserve, but with the determination will be seduced, resembling the rules of the will antagonize. Skip the next card for now. Countercontext, the United States ought to place all conventional military presence relating to NATO operators under the control of the United Nations peacekeeping operations. If veto any UN peacekeeping mission establishing NATO operative regions. The counterplan reverses US voters effective UN peace troops want to bring key expertise of Homeland 15. Type American jails community and face with competence shared Afghanistan and UK and all hospitals and help future missions, limited missions, and resources bombs. Post to address artificial for all nuclear capacity bomb offered to hold and serving peace and military foreign and project dimension. How combat treaties use especially after Iraq and State American advice and make difference use. Doesn't even focus on the mission itself and UN SS and opportunity with moderate to help out. Use recommend to UN peacekeeping skills over Williams. 15 military to develop more troops in the UN region countries in Africa, Washington. Shut the UX when military UN Washington develop important credibility. Has fish called countries region against sport for the countries want to use it. Dutch women send specialists in Washington police and modernization in UN peace and operations use public documents civilian protection. Put it there. It competes and solves the affirmative UN peace operation or side consent and parties conflict, control by country, foreign country, internal and private, and tries to know force of and self-defense as a resort to serve under UN operational command remain the respective authorities. UN does not have an army. The counterplan creates a working against cooperation as rules based on requesting use that are 22 US systems but self-verification ability even site engagement trying to use using leaders social media that US will to agents in the bilateral relation trying to use elected accuracy to relate to James Williams record of national information leadership kind of using use of the board good trying to rush to cop it's blind to president verified you and also list order and physical risk to use the structure of UN peace and policy to ensure that it's not co-opted use UN kill was to improve effectiveness UN using one for that part of the vice trying to improve well enhance capabilities use participation of the knowledge use one service reinforce the rules-based order go to the case new undisclosed affirmatives or voting issue for class not to limit advice supervision tax and employee time positions that rely on artificial being engaged to win debates or interpretations critical one test by limiting no time we have to prepare for intended ways to with the affirmatives that also justifies conditionality against the affirmatives even if they're bad in the abstract it's crucial to test the affirmative on multiple angles since we don't know going into the round especially on a topic as broad as this which answers are kind of battering and tries to solve its TOC Octas you should be able to answer multiple arguments the AFT framework. Yes, active mission distinction for different obligation, though active mission means you're culpable for every mission, which is untenable. You could be creating cancer right now. Interesting in the case that the one sees suboptimal here is some alternative like consulting across the differences or tweak enforcement. The state isn't responsible. You should negate since the state isn't responsible or outside the scope of the jurisdiction means that's okay for them to admit being forced to avoid infinite culpability and or interpretation. The F must prove the United States ought to substantially reduce the military presence of West Asian North Africa region. Negate if we prove that morality is impossible. Ought is defined as a Western obligation. You to approach with the trouble and dilemma. All can see that evolution is shaped how we or that means military is our best condition. We just evolve differently. We would have different moral beliefs. Our beliefs are not necessarily true, but are a condition on our circumstances, which answers the first piece of one AC evidence because it proves that we could have evolved differently to have different moral belief sets that exist, and induction fails because it relies on the past to predict the future, which is infinitely regressive because it relies on the idea that the past exists as a prerequisite. Extinction at which presupposes that induction works, which has already been answered, and there's no reason I have a normative obligation to care about someone else. I can conclude, that's the ASOCAP. You descriptively describe something that's an existential impact, but there's no reason that I have to care about extinction in the context of someone else, which answers naturalism because it's evolving differently would have led to different natural facts.
Okay, cool. Sorry, 1 sec. Okay, are you good?
1 sec. Yeah.
Okay, the first, actually, yeah, the third counterplan, why does this compete with the affirmative?
Because it places troops related to NATO operatives under the control of the UN, and then...
Where does it say anything about NATO in the plan, in the text?
It says NATO in the counterplan. What are you talking about?
The third,
The third I said related to the plan. So, like, words of the plan.
You said related to the plan?
Yeah, like the words military presence in the plan, i.e. referring to the AFT plan.
Okay. Okay, cool. The sixth off, why does this compete with the affirmative?
Well, that's what I just explained before.
Could you, yeah, sorry, I wasn't listening. What did you say again?
Yeah, so any conventional military presence that has to do with NATO operatives is placed under the control of the United Nations, and then the U.S. can veto their presence under the UN.
And then, so, can you kick plagues?
No.
Okay, so then the U.S. would veto the peacekeeping missions established in NATO operations.
Wait, I changed my mind. Yes.
Okay, so you just place it under UN control, then what's the net benefit of putting it under, like, why does that solve the AF?
Well, because if the United States has the ability to veto...
Is the ability, or will they actually veto?
Oh, well, the counterplan says the U.S. vetoes it. So
okay, so they veto all NATO presence. Why doesn't that collapse NATO?
What? It doesn't veto all NATO presence.
Why not? The counterplan text does not say
context.
Middle East, North Africa.
Well, it collapses it in the context of the regions of the affirmative, which is why
operative
the
regions
related to NATO operatives.
You're telling me operative regions are just... You're telling me NATO only operates in West Asia and North Africa?
Well, no, but I think that's the burden of the one-year interpreting evidence that indicates that there's like a solvency deficit to counterplan that would collapse NATO, because the counterplan would do it in the context of the AF.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about the NC. Okay, actually, first of all...
Which NC?
The fourth off. Actually, okay, just to clarify, you skipped the second off.
Correct.
And you skipped the fifth off?
Fifth off is...
Or like you read the first...
I read the first card.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So did you accept any arguments in the NC?
Yeah, many.
Okay.
Do you want all of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So first, util fails, the Darwinian dilemma.
Oh, on the case page. Yeah, I got this.
Yeah. Oh, other than that?
Yeah.
There was nothing not on the case page? Yeah, there was nothing that wasn't on the case page.
Okay, cool.
Well,
Yeah. Okay, what are what triggers presumption and what triggers permissibility in the NC?
I mean, theoretically, anything could. I think the NC could. I think like each justification for the NC is potentially a skep trigger or permissibility trigger. I think all the reasons util fails are permissibility triggers. The reasons consequences fail.
Okay, that's fine. Can you describe to me why this means that why the NC means that we should be gay?
Yeah. Well, our argument is that util collapses to defense, or just like the offense under the NC. It's the idea that you can never force the sovereign to do anything because the status quo is always legitimate.
Okay. Status.
Conditional.
is, I'm setting the doc. Order is case, and then the spec argument, the super forecaster's counterplan, the NC, like everything under the fourth off, we can tweak, and then the last counterplan. Okay. Let me know when y'all are here.
Wait, sorry, is there a doc?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, is everyone else good? Okay. Oh, on the case it's gonna be the advantage and then like I guess the theory arguments and the framework. Reducing NATO presence bolsters Russian deterrence and creates EU takeover in the region. First is bandwidth overstretch collapses effectiveness, but removal of second, other multilateral institutions to fill in. Second, Article 5, using it broadly weakens the context of Eastern Europe. New acts are good. First is quick thinking as opposed to doing prep outs, which is the skill and around and outweighs their top end. Second, disclosure shields, which is benefit of doing research, speed, security, sales, but there's no topic innovation. There's no violation to ask bad, which means you can't vote on a third so we'll just write new advantages instead of new plans. Don't get networks, the generic time plans will protect new advantages. Advocacy says there's no good answer to new advantages. No act commission distinction. Governments are culpable for emissions for the purpose of protecting constituency, otherwise they would have no obligation to make merger. Illegal actions like way different agents have different ethical standings that affect their obligations and considerations. Deduction does not fail because I can be 99% of the sun will rise in the future, and it does not matter because they arguments just prove that induction is hard, not that it's impossible. All of our arguments justifying Utah will prove this later. Passes a prerequisite does not make sense because extinction precludes it. Moral certainty is our argument that is because it does not rely on induction to realize that we do not, if we do not know and we cannot be certain, then we must preserve the future. Skepticism, reject outer vote neg argument, triggers and tricks, it kills clash and denies the potential of engagement, refutation, which kills impact filter into offense, presumes the possibility of debate. Second, Pascal's wager if they're right, then nothing happens, but if they're wrong, extinction occurs. Err off on the side of the risk lives matter. Third, usual solves A, intuition solves claim is bad, which prevent extinction. Intuition that way, they are the foundational basis for any argument. Theories contradictory to most likely false. You can't deductively determine why. B, Occam's ratio, most simple solution to explain that nothing to an equation has a conclusion. It's correct. Four, step justifies atrocities, impossible, universally accurate, good or bad, because things like Holocaust or slavery can't be morally wrong. Five is voting should create their one time. Six, by proving the act is bad, obligations don't exist, or by proving that we don't have to win the act is a form of good obligation. They've also conceded fictionalism from the 1AC Joyce evidence, which says that you can make odd claims without having morality, which means that you should auto-vote affirmative. Spec, counter-interpretation, the affirmative is not to specify past the resolution. First, Afghan they sent by small mechanism takes before the court to topic dates, moves 1AC advantage. Second, reject spec infinite rigorous, there's no line from when you stop checking things, cause infinite crowd and infinite theory debates. We'll concede that substantial means nothing, which means that it solves nothing. It also means that we justify permanently counterplay and permanently both on every counterplay debate should focus on the mechanism of the AF, i.e. military plans are one, limiting words to the resolution. They don't solve class potential, does not matter for military details. Debates first on military plans are bad and wasting time. Central destroys education. All that dealings to predicate our perception with every app internally the same military plans. Infinite regress was already above. Usually ability to give us education standard on the education lost in this round. This specifically applies to the spec shell there. Interpret and CX checks all frame you can get the text to hold me to moral mean check read evidence like link to the data solves better. Super forecasters, this counterplan does not solve any of the app and it does not compete, it does not say military, it does not say MENA, NATO force is not specific to the affirmative, perm both over the plan makes no sense in non coherent text because it does not, they did not say the words in the one and C and did not send a text out. Yes, internally first the right line of the text of the plan. The counterplan solves all of your offense, does not drop the debater, it's drop the argument from both. It was already done perfectly app over the process of super forecasters, but do it for over MENA military presence instead of military presence says use the component of the app is not technically intrinsic, only use the words in the counterplan function intrinsic technically non-intrinsic terms are good, but I was above Menendez stupid study said didn't say anything that was 100. It said that anything that wasn't 100% accurate was a failure, which means that it's an unreasonably high burden, but our app to use the probability to weigh the impact. A regular process to try and extend deters Murdoch, but not credibility in either the beholder adversaries, deterred allies, deterred a function of understanding, and the eyes of rest credibility in public. Now, conditionalities of voting issue, the debate is over. They conceded that dispo solves from the 1AC, which means that Stratsky says the winner forced me to argue against multiple words with different convenience conditions that precludes the advantage of treating interaction. They conceded that they can kick it if we permit which allows for sufficient egg flexibility while preserving 1 AR strategic disadvantage. Drop the debater returns and valid implications keep the 1 AR too short reasonably ineffect arbitrary drug convention and no RBI decision win for being fair. Multiple angles, no dispo solid allows for a lot of different angles, and new apps not just like Hondo because the dispo and I've already justified why new apps are good, which takes out your offense. It also creates an unreasonable strategy for the 1 AC, and if the new apps are good, then takes that out. And also there's no evidence that this app is new. Hops. This NC does not make any sense. Their sovereign could will the state to the nature to decide not to resolve disputes between anything would not create any meaning. It affirms sovereigns only have jurisdiction in their territories, otherwise create disputes between states are impossible to resolve. The NC is morally repugnant, which justifies Jews submitting to the Holocaust since not just where sovereign pursues the sovereign which denies indigenous regions' rights and takes out every other paradox and external factor may be unverifiable with the negative use of language presumed truth. Examples now K, the framework beginning with the theoretical concept of plan against a link and those move 6 months on latency, forcing one to restart that has no link, extinction ways, that's Mexico. Now the counterplan, it collapses NATO because it would get rid of all NATO operations in the middle in Europe writ large, which means that it would definitely reach a Russian probing permutations due to the counterplan of the Middle East presence and keep all less textual intrinsicness. What's textual legitimacy was justified above.
Okay, try to count. Any reasons to reject the team of this condo?
IVIs,
Which are they?
Skep, Hobbs.
Skep and Hobbs, gotcha. The order is the reasons to reject the team, substantial, the strategic forecasters counter plan, the Hobbs NC, the satellite critique, and then the UN counter plan, and then the case.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes. The T substantial or like actually, you know what? T substantial first. Strategic forecasters counterplan, the Hobbs NC. On the Hobbs NC, I'll do like all of the reasons to reject the Skep argument and the Hobbs bad argument, then the satellite K and the UN counterplan. Cool. Everyone good? T substantial not going for a concede, or T substantial not going for a concede, they don't expect customer resolution, the strategic forecast plan not going for it, they drop that I'll concede they get intrinsicness from it, but they specifically drop they don't get topical intrinsicness, which is going to be relevant when we get to the counterplan because it's their only response to the counterplan. They conceded topical intrinsicness is bad because it specifically against new affirmatives because it allows them to specify because against new affirmatives there's no way for the negative to always be prepared. Topical intrinsicness lets them get past any counterplan by saying do it in the context of MENA. If we have a MENA Q1 then that's sufficient to vote negative because we read evidence that indicates that Middle East North Africa is key. Anything else lets the affirmative automatically win every debate, which excuse one your strategy. The Hobbs NC not going for it. I'll answer morally repugnant and Skep here. Here's the issue. They dropped that their standard, that we are an explanation of why their standard collapses to Hobbs, not a defense of Hobbs, which means any reason that that's insufficient is a reason you think your standard does not collapse to Hobbs, not a reason that Hobbs is morally repugnant or writ large, because we have not said Hobbs, we've just said your standard collapses to Hobbs, which is not a defense of Hobbs. That also applies to Skep. We have not said that morality does not exist, just that your framework does not prove an active obligation toward morality, which is sufficient to vote. Yeah, it's not sufficient to vote negative, but it doesn't matter because it's not a reason that they're winning this debate. Cool. The satellite critique. I'll do conditionality bad here. Dispo, the framing issue for this debate is that dispo solves is not an offensive reason. Conditionality is bad. When they dropped every reason, conditionality is good. They conceded that's crucial to testing the affirmative for multiple angles against new affirmatives and for negative preparation and for multiple angles. They also dropped that they should be ready to answer in the context of TOC Octas and one counterpoint and or multiple counterpoints are key to testing for multiple angles, which always any their strategic offense. They also dropped they don't get one-year theory. You should consider this an extension of one-year theory because it's a 2-to-1 skew and it recreates all the things that we think are bad. Even if it's not offense, and I'll concede on the theory page that you should be reasonable in the context of theory violations, which proves that our only obligation is to prove an offensive competing interpretation that their model is better than ours, but they've dropped reasons conditionality is good, and they don't have an offensive extension of counter bad when they've dropped terminal defense to the shell. That's sufficient. They didn't extend strats, they weren't. If they did, they conceded our response to it, which solves dispo bad is just a reason there's an alternative to conditionality, but they dropped unique reasons conditionality is good to testing the affirmative from multiple angles. They drop reasonability, they concede they don't get one-year theory. That's fine. I'll also win that the critique outweighs. I'm going to split this 2 and R, and I know it's usually bad, but the 1AR got to 2 off-pace positions with, and I kid you not, 12 seconds. I was looking at my timer. They've conceded functionally a critique that should end this debate, and their only answer is extinction outweighs, which is the one thing this critique answers. They've conceded that debate is a communicated space, normalizes scenarios of war in the context of consequences. The invocation of war standards makes war more likely to occur because war has now shifted terrains from being solely a physical terrain to being in the context of virtualized and in discursive spaces. Our argument is that the representation of war makes it far more likely to take place because war is something that does not occur in a vacuum, but occurs in the way we discursively represent it. When you talk about war, that frames IR, and the way that war is more likely to take place, every event as it exists has consequences, and the way that we discuss them in spaces like debate, it maintains the ideas of war that exist, i.e. when we speak about war, we are more likely to indicate that it is an ongoing process, which makes it more likely to occur. Even if you think this is unwarranted, we read a pretty good card on this, and they just conceded it. I will answer their arguments here. First, extinction outweighs. This is a non-starter because this is a turn to extinction outweighs. The entire critique says extinction is more likely to occur in the context because of the way that they represent war, which makes it far more likely to occur because they invoke war scenarios that seduce us into believing that we need to constantly solve threats, which is a securitization argument, but that ability to always securitize makes war more likely to occur. They also did not cross-apply the case or say that they are not securitization logic. I do not want to hear a new Twitter cross-application on this when it was not in the 1AR. They say weigh the plan against the case, this doesn't matter, and they did not have a warrant for it, just the words weigh the plan against the case, which is not a complete argument. You should not weigh the plan against the case, where we evaluate the 1NC as an object of research. The representations shape everything that go into the reading of the affirmative. The same reason that Kissinger and the pacifists both believe that we should pull out of the Middle East is because of the representations that go into shaping it. Even if they win, they get to weigh the plan against the case. It is irrelevant because our argument is that the plan is more likely to create all of the war scenarios that they think is bad and our seduction into the context of war, which is a reason that they're unable to solve any of their scenarios. Yeah, extinction always doesn't matter in that regard. They make more likely to occur, and they've dropped that discursive spaces uniquely. The only impact in discursive spaces is to disrupt the terrain that makes war scenarios more likely to occur. They don't have an answer to this, and it's just conceded. I do not want to hear new 2AR cross applications. Nothing is in the 1AR without a warrant, or with a warrant. The UN counterplan. They got to this with 5 seconds left, and most of this was after time. The counterplan solves 100%. The counterplan solves 100% of the case. The counterplan has the United States seek control of its troops and all other military presence in the context of NATO operatives in the Middle East as peacekeepers and relevant support to the United Nations, and veto any UN peacekeeping missions. It solves the after results in the UN removing military presence from NATO operatives because UN peacekeepers require mission authorization, which has the US veto power over it. Their only answer was permutation due to the counterplan. Their only answer was the top goal intrinsicness term, which is in the context of other Middle East, North Africa. Cross-apply top goal intrinsicness bad. I already extended that, which they've conceded. The only other argument is that it would get rid of all NATO operatives, which would collapse NATO. This is not true. If you listen to the 1NC explicitly said in Middle East, North Africa, even if it's not in the counterplan text, so that is their only response, and they've conceded a 100% risk of a net benefit. Independently, the solvency deficit was so underexplained. Just saying it collapses NATO operatives is insufficient. They dropped an internal net benefit. They conceded that China is taking over in the context of NATO operatives in the status quo. They are pushing their troops towards NATO operatives, which leads to China becoming increasingly expansionary. Our argument is that the United States needs to put presence in the context, or needs to put their troops under NATO presence, which is sufficient to solve because then they can veto that presence, but the United States will still be seen as being integral to that decision-making process, which is consistent to override Chinese presence that exists in the status quo, solves an existential impact. They dropped a 100% risk of an internal net benefit. It outweighs in terms of the case. They've conceded that China is revisionary and expansionist and is taking over in the status quo, which means only the counterplan has a risk of solving that net. Only the counterplan has a risk of solving that net benefit. The case assumes global stability, but China overrides the possibility for that taking place. So even if there's a 100% risk of the affirmative, which there's certainly not, only the counterplan is sufficient to solve. Yeah, 2 seconds on this. They said it collapses all NATO operatives, but in the 1NC I said only in the context Middle East, North Africa, or under the plan. They dropped top goal intrinsicness bad, which takes out that argument. Condo bad is not sufficient because they've conceded every reason condo is good. Yeah. Any reason that it's good is a reason. They've also dropped reject one-year theory, and that you should use reasonability. in the context of one error theory.
Honda. Everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
Conditionality kills affidavit incentives of development argumentation. Their model encourages nonsense, no risk options in one C, and kicks them, which decreases the educational values of debate. That it can debate, expand debates horizontally but not vertically, which outweighs because it kills high quality clash. The only impact of this debate and forces the 1 hour to short analytics instead of quality carded responses. The bottom line is that the 2 hours did not have a reason why dispositionality does not solve all of their offense, which means that you should there's no risk of any offense on the neg interrupt. This means that dispo solves we get straight turns to stick them with the counterplan, which solves abstract unless it's forced them, but they still get to test the app and kick out of perms, which solves neg flex and the permutation arguments. Evaluate their standards through sufficiency framing. Dispositionality solves most of their offense, or often should outweigh the marginal risk of their impacts. They're just wrong about the affirmative not extending Stratsky in the 1 AR. The Stratsky explanation was precise in the 1 AR, and it was definitely there in the 1 AC, which takes out their arguments as to why it is 1 AR theory. Their 1 AR theory bad arguments were not only not extended in the 2 NR, because they did not say reasons why 1 AR theory should be rejected in the 2 NR, but they also just did not all of the arguments were indexed to why 1 AR theory is bad because it creates an absolute debate where the 2 AR gets new arguments. They conceded that putting it in the 1 AC solves because we put the interpretation in the 1 AC, we put dispo solves and Stratsky in the 1 AC, which means that it solves all of their offense, which is just not something that was extrapolated in the 2 NR. TOC Octas does not matter for our argument. Reasonability was an argument that was indexed to spec. You don't get to cross apply it. Strategic offense was checked, and it also you're not reasonably linked to any of our offense. Condo is no offense for them because dispo solves be reasonable, don't be reasonable. This is 1 AC theory, 1 AR theory argument. Warrants were not extended. There was no reason why reject 1 AR theory was extended. They just kept asserting that it was conceded without extending any warrants, which is the bottom line. There are no K outweighs theory arguments. They said they'll do it later, but didn't. It also does not make sense because procedural, for instance, first, and they've conceded that there are two implications. The first, they've conceded that you have to drop the debater in the context of this, in the context of conditionality in the 1 AR because it's too short to check valid implications, which also takes out any of the reject 1 AR theory arguments because this argument was in the 1 AR. Stratsky, we did not concede a response to Stratsky. They said conceded our response, which is not an extension of a response. They've conceded again that dispo solves all of their offense because you still get sufficient options to test the 1 and C, i.e. you get multiple counterplots, K's and C's. They're all dispositional, and there's just no extrapolation. This leads to neg overflex. They have K's and C's T. This has dispo counterplans. Condo gives them too many options, especially when they have a 7463 times you. And dispo solves you have multiple options, but at least you have to answer my arguments. They haven't quantified how much flex they need to error off on clash. And affirmative is harder. We have to speak in the dark, while the negative adapts to our fairness claims outweighed. There were just all the answers to Condo were assertions that there are arguments conceded. The 1 AR did not concede any of these arguments. There was a robust extension of Stratsky. Dispo solves was also extended. There are no reasons why dispo does not solve. The only argument was that it's not an offensive reason. Any risk of offense is enough to vote affirmative. Drop the debater implication and competing interps in the context of conditionality they've conceded because reasonability is arbitrary in the context of theory. In the context of T-spec, it was different because we said infinite regress justifies reasonability. Those are just two completely different arguments. You don't get cross applications of our arguments, and they've conceded all F offense here. Yeah, direct 1 AR theory doesn't apply. They didn't have arguments specific to shifting the debate to the neg, and it doesn't lead to better argument innovation because you can still read new arguments and kick out of them and reprint.
Good debate.
Good debate.